Start. So welcome, hello. Great to have you all join us for our Global Connections as the World Affairs Council of Houston hosts conversation with Hector Villarreal. I'm Sandia Bayou, a Chief Development Officer at the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. It is our hope that you, your families, friends are staying healthy and doing well. And now, more than ever, it is important to stay informed about what is happening not only in our city, but around the world. And we, World Affairs Council, brings this opportunity to you to participate, engage, and continue education. For our participants, as in our viewers, please use the Q&A button, which is in the bottom of the screen, to submit any questions. Again, Q&A button, which is located at the bottom of your screen. So wonderful. Just very quick one, programming note, October 29th, 20 days exactly from today, it's our annual World West Trivia Night. And I know you care about world affairs because you're here today. I encourage you to gather your friends, family, neighbors, join as a team to participate in this trivia. It is completely free, as I said. It's gonna be fantastic trivia, engagement, questions, team building, and yes, there'll be a large trophy at the end. The winning team will get a trophy for a year to hold on to. We'll have international magic, well-known magicians are gonna join us. So great fun. That is again, October 29 at 5 p.m. Any and all details about the event on our website, wachouston.org. Thank you again. On that note, I think we're ready. Hector, welcome.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon.
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you for this great invitation. Let me tell you, I've been a fan of the World Affairs Council for more than 20 years, so this is quite a treat for me. Thank you.
Fantastic. On a healthy note, how are you, family, and the rest of the team of LUCHO currently doing?
Everyone, thank God everyone's safe. We've kept up with our friends and our clients, and luckily everyone is doing well so far.
That's really the most important. You have had really interesting career path. Please allow me to share some of the highlights with our participants. Currently, you serve as the CEO of LUCHO Holdings Incorporated, which is a privately owned holding company with interests in Brazil, Italy, and Nicaragua. LUCHO branded products include menswear, women's shoes, and a private cigar line. Originally from Monterey, where you studied engineering, eventually you found your way to Texas, joined Univision as news anchor, then weather anchor. You are also very engaged in the local community. As such, you have received numerous recognitions, have served on boards such as Houston International Festival, American Cancer Society, Gulf Coast Development Board, Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, Theater Under the Stars, Boys and Girls Harbor, the Women's Fund, and currently you serve as the board president of Helping a Hero, an organization that builds adaptive homes for wounded veterans. Wow, what an accomplishment. And I'm sure so many other things in there. Question, how do you go from Univision to CEO LUCHO Holding? How did that story happen? Was it an opportunity? Something must have happened.
Let me tell you, sometimes I wake up and I even ask myself that same question. And it all started when I was very, very young. And I can go into me learning to read, which at one point was a challenge. And then once I was able to read, I discovered that we had this entire room full of books. And in these books were the stories of champions, of people who had been successful, of things that have happened throughout history. And I read one book in particular. It was a biography by a gentleman who was described as a member of parliament, an explorer, a financier, a businessman, and an ambassador. And he had a list that went on and on and on about his accomplishments. And I thought to myself, that would be something I'd like to do, because when I was very young, a lot of my friends already had their path of what they wanted to do, whether they wanted to go into, they wanted to be a fireman, or they wanted to be a teacher, or whatever the case was, which wasn't exactly those. But I never had any of these one path things. I identified with, I want to do all of that. And one thing led to another when I was at Univision, and I was there probably for about 14 years at the time. And I was seeing the changes that were already coming as far as social media, uh, there was going to be more, there were going to be more people that wanted to fill the very few positions that were available in media. And I thought I should try to find something different. And I ended up this amazing place, Lucho. It's been around for 30 years, and I became a client. One year I signed an awesome contract, and I was able to become a client here, and I enjoyed the fashion. And one thing led to another. I was speaking with the previous owner. He was ready to retire, and I was at the right place at the right time, which I think would be the story of my life.
That's fantastic. And then, of course, then there's a Hector, the woman's shoe designer. How did that happen?
Well, what we do here at Lucho is we design and manufacture under our label, Lucho. And I have to give credit to the founders, a gentleman by the name of Luis Flores, who founded the company in 1989. And he had been very involved with the community. If you go back to 1989, and they actually had this event called the Rainforest Gala, which they brought in very prominent people, and we're talking about the early 90s, when before we had 1,000 galas a year. There were less galas back then. So he founded it. I have to give credit to him. He laid the foundation for this. And then I came in on the scene, and I had no experience in retail. I had certainly had no experience in designing menswear. But what I did have is I had experience having gone through engineering school. I did know a little bit about load weight distribution. And my business partner, who her name is Patricia, she would complain that she couldn't find a shoe that she really liked, that was adorable and cute, but also comfortable. So after asking her a couple of questions, I said, that sounds like a load weight bearing distribution problem, which was one of my final exams. It's just like building a bridge. So what we did is we designed the shoes where the weight of the body is distributed along three parts in your foot. And that is how we ended up, or how I ended up becoming a shoe designer. Again, right place at right time. I don't know if I should keep on saying that, because now I don't think I can take credit for anything, because everything has been just sheer luck.
No. So if a member of our council or a friend would love to come in and have a shoes designed by you, how would one go about that?
Well, very interesting question, because we do have the ability to make a shoe for someone, but we have a certain set of patterns and forms that we have to follow. So if that design or their desires fall within those parameters, then we can certainly accommodate that. And let me tell you, it is a fun process.
Wow, sounds fun. Are there other important points about Lucho that we should know that probably would like to share with the viewers? It's very obvious where you're sitting as well. Perhaps some points on the menswear, which is the primary product that you have.
Yes, and that was a blessing and a curse at the same time when I came into this business. When I was working in television, I was luckily I was the weather anchor for Univision for many years. And when you're the weather anchor for Univision, you're basically known around town as the weather guy, which was fine. I was the weatherman. You know, everybody loves the weatherman, even though he doesn't have to be right, which was fun for me. And then when I came into this business, I didn't want to be known as the suit guy. I was a guy who just sells suits, because I thought that we had a bigger mission than that. So after talking with a few of my friends and my mentors, we got really involved with the Barrow College of Business at the University of Houston. And we decided that instead of just becoming someone who sells clothing or sells suits, we would incorporate the use of a suit in the business world. And although that has changed a bit in where we are now this year, so what we decided is that we're going to teach these kids, college students, how to not look like they just came out of college. And what that entailed, it was not a matter of pricing or of expense. It was simply a matter of educating on proper fit, on where the hem of your pant should be, the length of the sleeve on your jacket or your shirt, how to tie a tie. And those little things that seem small, but when you actually step out into the business world, I've always believed that people decide what you are before they get to know who you are. So presence and presentation and the way you carry yourself is very important. And part of that, what we saw, which was my initial desire and my mission, was to instill in these kids, I call them kids, college kids,
Mm-hmm.
college young people, was to instill in them a sense of confidence that you really don't get by hitting the books. And then when this person or these students would show up for their interview, the interviewer would have the reaction of, what, there's something about this person applying for this job. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something about him or her. And what that something was that sense of inner confidence. And then they had the confidence to go forward, and I had the confidence to be able to run this business with a mission and not just selling things.
Wow, what an inspiring message. It's completely so needed, right? We know what we know, but we also don't know what we don't know. So it's definitely
Yep.
more helpful.
Absolutely right. And I take my own example. My father was a blue collar worker. He worked in a factory, did really well for himself. But I didn't get the knack for his ability at mechanics. Everyone else in my family on my father's side, they're very mechanical. I have all cousins that are engineers and everything. And apparently I didn't get any of that when I came into this world. But that message is very, very important, because we're able to convey something that we have. But if you don't have the example of somebody handing it down to you, from whether it's your family or a mentor, you just don't know. And that really is the only thing they don't know. And that's an easy fix.
We know that the current global environment has completely changed the way we do business, or the way business takes place. We know that so much of the supply chain has been affected. Definitely also dressed so differently for the year of 2020. The attire of our global clothing has changed. How is your clothing industry doing in this current situation?
At this point, we've come out of the worst at the very beginning. At the very beginning, a lot of our production is for the menswear is in northern Italy. And if we remember, northern Italy was one of the areas that was hardest hit by the pandemic. And everything slowed down. The production was shut down completely. At the same time, on the demand side, that also went away. We didn't have the demand we would have normally for a spring set of new suits for our accountants, our bankers. So at the same time, one canceled out the other. So we didn't suffer that much in that sense. We luckily I've always had I've been a big believer of having a well-run, streamlined, very efficient operation. So as far as debt, we don't carry a lot of debt. We also use futures options for materials and things like that. So we were in a position where we could sit back and wait and see what happens. Now, we're now at the end of October. We're at the beginning of October. Yes, so the days, I'm sure everyone understands, the days just blend into one to the other. So we're at the end of September, beginning of October, and things have changed tremendously. Within the past 2 weeks, we've had people who have wanted to come in because they've been locked down. They haven't been able to go anywhere. There was this, we hear about this pent-up demand, and the clientele that we cater to, luckily, they're in a position to come in and have part of their wardrobe redone or have some alterations, and that has been able to help us. And now the productions are up and running again. Brazil, we manufacture our women's shoes in Brazil. That's still a little bit of an issue, but I hope by December everything will be up and running again. I can see a few things opening up already, but we were affected. But luckily, we were in a position to not panic about it and have on-demand things.
Wonderful. I see a little bit of a video connection. Are we still okay? I see a little bit of a, can you still hear me and see me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. It could be in the weather. We know some turbulent weather coming through. So that also affects these kind of situations. When it's live. So glad to hear it so well. As we look to the future, this is more about kind of fashion. What new men's clothing trends are you seeing? Are you seeing any new trends for men's clothing?
We're seeing a lot of sport coats, and what we're doing is we're taking cues from the 50s and 60s styles and patterns. There was a show way back in the 70s called the Rockford Files. And the Rockford Files was something I'd watch every day. And it was this private investigator, a very handsome gentleman, and I would always notice his sport coats. And the sport coats had a pattern that now we've incorporated that into some of our designs where we call them lifesaver jackets. Because you can have it in your car, your vehicle, and it doesn't matter what you're wearing, whether it's jeans, dress pants, whatever color, that jacket, that sport coat will go with it. Since now we're actually, the feedback I've been getting from some of my clients is that they're not having so many meetings at the office, but they're actually meeting with clients outside of the office, having lunch and afternoon, and that requires a professional presence where they're not going to show up the way they would be at home, where they're in workout clothing and a t-shirt. So that sense of respect for the occasion and the moment is still prevalent.
Oh, that's wonderful. Actually, I have one of the questions come in and say, is there a color for the year 2021? As we know, different fashion trends highlight different colors. Is there a color of the year for 2021 that you know of? I don't know.
And one of the things that we've been seeing is it's not going to be just one color, but it's going to be black with silver or white tints in it. And that's something that's very surprising because it tends to be very, very professional. And we just received some of our fabric samples. So we're not going to be having a lot of color coming in, but more of subdued hues where they actually go with everything else that you have, because our wardrobe does not have to be as extensive. It doesn't have to be that wide, but rather a little bit more narrow. But depth-wise, as far as you're able to utilize it, that's what we're going to be having.
Oh, wonderful. I have another question coming in. Sebastian is actually asking, referencing to the book you said, what is the name of the book you read that was the biography of the parliament member?
It was, oh my gosh, I was hoping no one would. I remember I was 8 years old, and it'll come to me. It was a gentleman in the Churchill times, Winston Churchill, before Winston Churchill became prime minister. It'll come to me, and if not, I'll have it up on the website, or I'll pass it along. It just went away. It literally just flew out of my head.
That's all right.
Sorry, I apologize for that.
That's all right. We have another question. How do you find balance in your daily, weekly routine? Perhaps some hobbies?
Very interesting. So I think one of the things that's happened is so we also have a cigar company, and the reason, let me go back a little bit. So we have the men's clothing, and then as you well know, as everybody well knows, there's never a shortage of people who want to tell you what you should be doing. So we would hear that, Hector, you should make women's clothing. Hector, you should make women's clothing. We looked into that project and discovered that it was very complex, and it was much bigger than what we would be able to handle. So we went to the next thing, which is the production, the design and manufacture of women's shoes. And that was something that we could take on, and we've had it now for 9 years. It's been very successful. We've been doing the trade shows ever since, so we have our shoes that are purchased by buyers and other boutiques literally around the world here because of the lack of the trade shows. And then one of the things that I noticed that a lot of my clients were cigar aficionados, and I wanted to provide a cigar to my clients who would come in. They were very good clients, and I wanted to give them something in appreciation. Well, I couldn't find a decent cigar that I could buy at a decent price on a consistent basis. So I looked into it, and one thing led to another. Again, right place at the right time. I met up with someone who was a manufacturer, and he wanted to get out of the business as well. So we took on that endeavor, and we started manufacturing in Mexico, and then eventually we moved our facilities and our production into Nicaragua in the Esteli region. So, and that's also been a passion of mine. And then some of the things that we also do, so that leads to one of our hobbies, clay shooting. we go to the gun range and we shoot clays. Well, that engenders a lot of communicating and visiting with clients, being able to sponsor a team and invite those clients. So my balance has been kind of incorporated into my job or the things that I do in my business. And I go, and I've heard this, if you do something that you really, really love, you never work a day in your life. Even though I come into every day to the office and all my projects, some days I'm just dragging, I'm just dead tired, but I'm never unhappy about it. I just know I'm tired, but I'll get through it, have a cup of coffee, have some light lunch, and we'll get through it. But the balance is that, and I'll share with you, for someone out there that's has been maybe thinking about going into business for themselves or starting their own business. Before I got into this, I had been in television for 15 years. For 15 years, I'm receiving a steady paycheck from a well-established company. Job security, I don't worry about a thing. The day is over, I go home, and I don't take work with me. When I came to be one of the owners, I resigned Univision, and then everything changed that instant because I went from a salary employee to basically unemployed. Every single day I wake up unemployed. So I have to work for that paycheck. If we don't have sales, if we don't have that dynamic that creates that exchange, there's no salary. And there was this fear in me the first few months of, I have to make a sale. It was a bit of a panic, and we can go into it on another session, but it was literally panic. And as the second month went along, things were kind of smooth. I was getting the hang of doing what I'm doing. And then I have a client who called me, who's a client, and still a very good client and a mentor. And it's a Wednesday afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And he calls, Hector, what are you doing? And I answer, I'm just here at the store. Well, let's go play golf. I'm on my way to pick you up. Okay. I didn't think anything about it. And luckily, I always have my golf club ready to go in case of an emergency. And for a golf emergency, 30 minutes later, the client's in here at the store. I walk out with my clubs, and I'm riding to the golf course with him at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday. And that's when I thought to myself, wow, okay, I made the right move. This is something very unique. So the message is, do your research, of course, your due diligence, but don't let that fear conquer you, because you're going to feel it. You will feel that, but that does not mean that it should conquer you. Go through it, live through it, analyze, ask yourself those questions. Is this the right thing for me? And when I thought I could see myself going and playing golf, which I play horrible golf, but it still was at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. I'd never been able to do that, nor did I ever believe my wildest dreams that I could do something like that.
That's wonderful. I have some more questions coming in. You have some amazing clothing around the world. When shall we expect a broader women's line?
Very good question. Now, we are working, I will let you in on a secret. Yes, we are working on securing a manufacturer. We're going to start with women's business suits. And the reason you probably don't see a lot of women's business suits that are popular or that you really, really, truly enjoy, it's because it is a little bit different than creating or structuring a suit for men. Men have less measurements and variation in measurements than women do. There are more points of measurement with the women's body, and to be able to engage a manufacturer to adjust up and down and make all those variables incorporate into production. The reality is they don't want to go into it because it's easier to manufacture a men's suit that's like this, size 38, size 40, 42. And that's just a production issue, but we have the manufacturer. We're in the process of negotiating the contract because our production it'll be small until we start ramping it up. So we go back to that securing future production capabilities. So we're in the process, and hopefully by January we will have the first samples in the store.
Oh wow! Yeah. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hector, you probably know that what we do is education. And I say we educate high school students, university students, and it goes on to a membership till one is able and willing to participate with us. And with this new platform, it allows us really to engage with members even geographically further or different timelines. So there's no restrictions on that. And part of the education is our student world affairs councils. We call them SWACs, which are student chapters established in high schools. And in preparation for this visit, actually, I reached out to some of the students who are members of the Student World Affairs Councils. And if for any listener, your children do not belong to a SWAC yet, please reach out to me. We would love to have a student chapter established in a school. It can also be for homeschooled kids, Title I schools. There is no limitation. So some of the questions are submitted by the students.
Wonderful. That I love that. That is awesome.
And it goes. Jim says, if you could provide your young self advice, what would it be? Perhaps some lessons learned, looking back kind of in your career path or maybe personal life.
I would say study champions, study successful people, and find a mentor. And if you don't have a mentor at home, I firmly believe that if you identify somebody that's been successful in a field that you like, approach that person, write a letter, write an email, and 99% of the time, I can promise you that that person will be willing to help. Successful people, part of what feeds their drive is to see other people successful. And the great majority of the time, they will share. If you ask, how did you do this? Can you show me? Can you help me be successful? And don't be afraid to ask. And if not possible or feasible to do it in person, study champions. And I phrase that because back in my day, you had to go to the library and try to find a book. First, you had to identify the idea and the person, and then try to find a book that would tell you those things. Now, it's possible with this Google search. All you have to do is type in how to be successful in and fill in the blank. That's what I would tell my younger self, and what I would tell the young kids, even kids that are in college, because a lot of times not everyone has the privilege of having someone that has all that knowledge that we seek. And we can't give what we don't have. And as much as my parents loved me, my mother and father were great parents, they couldn't give me what they don't have. If they don't have that ability to develop or to run a business or to start a business, or whatever that I wanted to learn, if they don't have it, they can't give it to me. And it's okay to look outside of that. That's why we have school. That's why we have the internet. That's why we have libraries, and they're halls of knowledge. So that's what I would tell them. Seek out the person that's successful in what you're wanting to do, and study champions. Like I did inadvertently by reading that biography, which I haven't remembered the name yet.
That's all right. Sebastian, you can reach out to me, and Hector, I'm sure we can provide that.
Yes.
Amanda has a kind of customer-related question, but it also goes back to the people interactions and skills.
Yes.
What are your 2 or 3 simplest guidelines for interacting, getting to know someone? And I think that applies from, getting to know from us as people to people, but also I think for you as somebody in the search for a customer, I think that certainly is a skill that you need to be able to read and understand and to relate. So what are your 2 or 3 simplest guidelines for interacting, getting to know someone?
I would say one of the first ones would be get to know yourself. Get to know yourself, get to know your weaknesses and your strengths. And so you have a command of who you are. And what that does is that when you're able to take that point of view about yourself, then you move towards more confidence, and you're able to walk into a situation knowing where you stand. And then that serves 2 purposes. The first one is, if I identify one of my weaknesses, that allows me to identify the person that can help me overcome that weakness. And we go back to what I said earlier about finding a mentor. If I'm in a room with a person who's an amazing salesperson of women's shoes, well, I can design them, but I'll be very honest, I cannot sell shoes to save my life. But if I know this person is there, then I would approach them and tell them my story. This is what I do. I design shoes, sir, but I can, or ma'am, but I can't sell them. Would you show me something, a quick trick or two? And at the same time, knowing my strengths, I can approach someone who shares my passions. And when you connect in that sense, that is the biggest and most important part, connecting with someone. And we do this on a daily basis here in all of my endeavors. It's trying to connect with someone. And if I find that I don't have an immediate connection, well, then I ask, what are your hobbies? Have you been this? What do you think about baseball? What do you think about shoes? Something that interests me, you reach out to that person. Do you like to go to the movies, to the opera? And there's always a connection, but the only way you're going to ever find out is by asking. And that's how we've been able to be successful so far.
Wonderful. Connor is asking us, what are 3 best quality, kind of ready-to-go items that each man should have? Such as, you mentioned blazers, shoes, ties.
Absolutely.
What should be kind of in a close reach that should be a staple, if I can say that?
Yes, you should have a very dark charcoal colored sport coat, a dark navy blue sport coat, a pair of brown shoes, and a pair of black shoes that you use for these important meetings. Not for everyday use, but for these important meetings. And clean shirts, clean and pressed. That's all that matters. The quality doesn't matter as long as it's clean and it's well pressed. And we can go into showing you pictures of before and after with the same clothing. All we did was adjust this, whether the length of the sleeves, the hem of the pants, the proper fit on the jacket, and all that. It did not cost money per se. It would cost the use of a tailor. The tailor would charge $15 to fix your hem on your pants and the sleeves. But that changed, those $15, $25, the return on that was priceless because it was a completely different person. So I would say those 2 sport coats, and then you can share my contact info with them and reach out to me on these questions, because I'd be more than happy to share how there are occasions where quality is very evident. And there's one thing between being lower cost and cheaply made. There's a huge difference in that. And then on the other spectrum, then you have very expensive and very well made. So those are 2 different things that exist. I'd be willing to share my knowledge on that, on how to identify and be able to adjust to your budget so you can have those pieces and feel confident.
Wonderful. Ray writes, Rockford Files was one of my favorite shows growing up. I love your concept of a lifesaver jacket, especially in today's unpredictable climate. Do you have any feeling or thoughts on the longer term landscape for the fashion industry, particularly for professional or business wear?
Quality and proper presentation will always be first. And we can go back throughout history and Roman times. The elite, or the people who were in positions, they wore a nicer cloth than people who weren't in a position to do that. And if you wanted to enter the notary, I believe they called it the notary.
Nobility.
As a person who wanted to enter one of the government offices, there was a protocol. You had to be washed. You could not go in just dirty. You would have to be washed. Your clothes would have to be clean. So there was always a protocol for that. And from going forward, I firmly believe, this has been happening for centuries, I firmly believe that going forward, that same set of rules are the ones that will be applied, the quality and proper presentation.
Wonderful.
And that was my business partner who just walked by. So.
That's all right. It's live. It's a store, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing. It's alive, so it's wonderful. Sebastian has a question. Any general tips on growth for small businesses, not specifically the fashion industry, making less than $1 million? So any perhaps guidance, tips for small business from your experience?
Do we know what kind of business we're talking about in particular?
I don't know.
Okay.
Growth of small business.
I think the first thing would be, in my personal experience, what's helped me throughout this would be establish relationships with bankers, with a community bank. We have several in Houston that they're based in Houston. The people live just down the street from you. That is very important. A relationship with a banker, with an attorney, whether it's a patent attorney, an attorney, a business attorney, a commercial lease person. These are people that you know, and reach out to them before you need them. You ask for money when you don't need it, and you ask for help when you don't need it, because by the time you need it, you try to buy insurance. By the time your house is flooded, it's too late. So those things, the accountant, the attorneys, the commercial leasing, in my case, because of we've had issues with our commercial lease, and I have somebody that I can reach out to instead of fumbling through, I was gonna say phone book, but going through the internet or trying to call someone to ask if they knew someone. That would be the first thing. Establish those relationships now, and then reach out to people who are, again, being successful. And it's not a bad idea to emulate. If you see how one company is being successful, there's no sense in reinventing the wheel. Just adapt it to what you're doing. But my first recommendation would be establish those relationships.
Great. And I think we're slowly coming to the end of the discussion as well. Can you believe we're almost the lunch hour is over? So
This has been a lot of fun. This has been incredible.
Yeah, thank you. So in case for some of the customers or listeners might not know, LUCHO is an actual store in Uptown Park?
Yes, we've been here 20 years now, 20 years in Uptown Park.
So anybody can pop in and say hi to you, Hector.
Yes, absolutely.
Host, and as you mentioned, you share your wisdom and guidance, and not just from the attire, but perhaps other life lessons and how one goes from coming from abroad and seeing the career paths and opportunities, taking those opportunities when they present themselves, and therefore leading to success that you are in charge of here. So on that note, I'm going to again say thank you, everybody. And any thoughts, Hector, from you before we?
I just want to remind them that they can follow those recommendations of establishing the relationship. I think if we were to summarize everything that was going on, it was relationships with a local, a community bank, relationships with people who know more than you. I've always seeked out people that know more than me. It's not that difficult in my case, but it's always trying to find out and go up there and hello, hey, I need this. Will you help me? I guarantee you 99% of the time, successful people are more than willing to share their knowledge.
Yeah. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. I think I learned a lot, and I'm sure our membership and participants also learned a lot from this dialogue. And it is global, the world that we live in, and we even see those local to global connections in a business world, as we do in any webinars and any other global conversations that we hold. So again, congratulations on your success. Thank you for being part of the organization, champion here in Houston, and we look forward to seeing you soon, and all of the listeners, ideally in person. Trust me, we want it sooner than later. When it's safe, we'll be back in person. Again, wishing you everybody a wonderful weekend, happy Friday, and stay healthy and engage with the World Affairs Council. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you, Hector.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you.